I mean, for the sake of time, I just move and try to give time for the room. I just want to turn to Iraq now, and I really want to be direct about this because it's not an abstract question for many of us in this room. Iraq, as you know, has a painful and well-documented relationship with wars. It could not escape, whatever the origins, in the 80s, and the Gulf 1991, and the second Gulf War in 2003. Each conflict, regardless of how it started, transformed Iraq into a theater of devastation whose consequences the Iraqi people bore most heavily. The current escalation raises a question that is both analytical and urgent. What are the principal risks this war generates for Iraq, given the intensifying military escalation?
So, you obviously are much closer to the events than I am. So you have to take what I say as somebody who's speaking from afar. I don't see in Iran any desire right now to take the battlefield into Iraq. Maybe I think there are two things that work. One is that they don't see the necessity or a strategic benefit of doing so, because the Strait of Hormuz is far more important to Iran and its strategy of war than so-called proxies are. But that may change at some point. And if there is a scenario in which Hashd al-Sha'bi becomes more involved, that scenario could change. There is an economic threat to Iraq. Of course, with the disruption of flow of oil, etc., it might have an economic impact on Iraq. On the other hand, in the longer term, the outcome would be fairly important. If Iran ends up out of this war, able to survive and negotiate with the US and end to the war, I think it would protect Iraq from basically an escalation of the conflict. And it would bring Iraq much more to whatever is the post-conflict security architecture of the Persian Gulf, right? And in fact, it might also open Iran to a lot more trade, which would have its own dynamics for Iraq as well. Secondly, it will protect Iraq from a larger project of that, as I mentioned, Israel has, of basically deciding the future of the Middle East. Israel and maybe other Arab countries may look at Syria and Ahmad al-Sharra essentially as a way in which to finish off the Shias in Lebanon and ultimately in Iraq. In other words, if the goal of Bibi Netanyahu is to end the Shia axis, it would look to something like Syria as a way of creating sectarian tensions in Lebanon and in Iraq itself as well, and perhaps changing the political order in these regimes. So that might be a longer term threat if this war ends up breaking down the Islamic Republic. But as it's going, I think in the short run, I don't see a danger of the battlefield moving into Iraq right now. I think Iran sees far more advantage going after the energy, the Gulf economies, and also the Strait of Hormuz.